Christopher Nolan turned homecoming into a kind of tshuva, a kind of repentance. He took the greatest homecoming story in Western literature and quietly made it a story of moral transformation. He made the Odyssey Jewish. The Jewish answer to Odysseus's dilemma is Odysseus's answer: bind yourself in advance. That's what a mitzvah is, a commitment made before the moment of temptation arrives. Odysseus's entire journey is really asking, it's not asking, can I reach the shore of Ithaca? But after everything, after 20 years, after everything that I've done and everything done to me, can I still be known? Can anybody still recognize me? That's what home is. Home isn't a palace. Home isn't an address. Home is the place where someone knows your story. Someone understands your scars because they were there when you got them. Last night, my son and I watched Christopher Nolan's incredible movie. Talk about epic, the definition of epic film and epic story, The Odyssey. 3 full hours on real, 70 millimeter film, the way it was meant to be seen. When the lights came up, the first thing I said to my son after those 3 hours was, 3 hours or nearly 3 hours flew by. I found the movie riveting. So that's my personal experience of it. Not a critique in any scientific way, not in any academic way, not looking at translation, mistranslation, just looking at an experience. But I want to just share some thoughts, a rabbi's point of view, as I've been processing overnight and today, thinking about Jewish aspects and Jewish perspective on Christopher Nolan's extraordinary film. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that idea that 3 hours flew by, which tells you that it's an incredible story, well told. Also, I'm thinking about 20 years of war and wandering, and a man who wears his scars on his body by the time he reaches home, and that's so significant in the Odyssey. Here's another thing that struck me. The Odyssey is a story about a father trying to return to his son, and a son who has spent his whole life searching for a father he cannot remember. And there I was, a father sitting just next to my beloved son. We were watching it together. But I wasn't only watching it as a father. I was watching it as I do as a Jewish person, as a rabbi, because my people have been telling stories actually at the same time that Homer was singing his and writing his. And when you put those two ancient voices side by side, something, I think, remarkable happens. So this is the Meaning Mindset podcast. I'm Rabbi Ron Li-Paz, just sharing some brief thoughts on the Odyssey. Let's talk about the Odyssey. Nearly 3,000 years ago, just think about this idea that two small peoples on opposite shores of the Mediterranean gave the world its foundational stories. In Greece, a blind poet sang of a king of Ithaca, a man of 1,000 tricks, fighting for 10 years at Troy, wandering through 10 more, through monsters, through his own temptations, through shipwrecks, for one purpose: to get home. The Greek word nostos, and we know the word homecoming comes from that. It's how we get the word nostalgia from the Greek, the ache for home, that homecoming. And in roughly the same era, my ancestors were telling a story that moves in exactly the opposite direction. Our story doesn't begin with a man fighting to get home. It begins with a man commanded to leave home. God speaks to Avram. Later, Abraham, he says in Hebrew, lech lecha, go forth, leave the things that you know, go on your epic journey, go from your land, go from your birthplace, and the word literally says from your home, from your parents' home, to a land that I will show you. No map, no description, no guarantee. Odysseus sails toward everything he already knows. Abraham walks towards something he can't see. And here's what I think is the astonishing part. Homer's epic ends in arrival. The king restored to his palace, his wife, his son. The Torah, the 5 books of Moses, ends with Moses standing on a mountaintop, Har Nebo, Mount Nebo, looking across a river at the promised land, seeing it, never entering it in his lifetime. One story ends at home. The other story ends mid-journey. Just hold that thought, because by the end of this conversation, and it won't be long, I want to show you why the difference matters and why, in a strange way, the two stories may end up in the same place after all. Now, Christopher Nolan, this genius filmmaker, he did what every great adapter does. He made choices. One of the choices that he made that caught my attention more than any monster or shipwreck, though they were epic in Homer's poem, the gods are everywhere. So if you think about it, in the book, the gods are throughout the journey. They are prominent. Athena schemes and protects. Poseidon rages, and Poseidon certainly rages in the film, and Poseidon punishes. And Zeus essentially adjudicates. Odysseus is a brilliant man. Yes, we know that. But his fate is a chess game played in the heavens, in the sky above his head. Things happen to him because heaven decrees them. In the film, the gods have receded a little. The storms still come. The monsters still rise, and wow, do they rise. But the journey belongs to the man. Nolan's Odysseus isn't simply trying to get home. He's trying to become a kind of man who deserves to come home. His homecoming isn't a matter of geography. It's a matter of character, and that's what makes it a hero's journey. And sitting in that theater last night, I nearly laughed out loud because I know that idea. My tradition has a name for it. That journey back, we call it in Hebrew teshuvah. So think about, if you've seen the film or read the great book, think about it in the context of teshuvah. It's usually translated as repentance, and we have a context for that. But the Hebrew word literally means return. It's the Odyssean journey. Tshuva is the Jewish teaching that the road back to God, to the people we've hurt, to the person we were meant to be, or even that we were, is never closed. But the road has conditions. You have to face what you've done. You have to feel its weight. You have to repair the damage. You have to choose a different choice, a different outcome. Return in Judaism isn't just walking or rowing back. It's not walking back through a door. It's becoming someone worthy of that door. The rabbis go further. They say in a place where a person who has returned stands, even the perfectly righteous cannot stand. The one who fell and fought his way back outranks the one who never fell. Just personalize that for a moment. So let me say something that may surprise you. Christopher Nolan turned homecoming into a kind of tshuva, a kind of repentance. He took the greatest homecoming story in Western literature and quietly made it a story of moral transformation. He made the Odyssey Jewish, I'll say. I don't think he knows that, but from my purview, he did. Now, one of the most famous scenes in all of literature, the Sirens. If you know Greek mythology or you know the Odyssey, you know that character, the Sirens on the rocks luring sailors to their death. Creatures whose song is irresistible. Not beautiful, irresistible. Engineered, you might say, to bypass human will entirely. Every sailor who hears it steers toward the rocks and dies. Full knowledge of the danger saves no one. That's the terrifying part. The Sirens don't defeat your ignorance. They defeat your willpower. And what does Odysseus do? He does the wisest thing any human being has ever done in the face of irresistible temptation, at least in that context. He doesn't trust himself. He knows his own will, and he knows its shortcomings. He puts wax in the sailors' ears, and he has them bind him to the mast. It's a beautiful scene in the film. With strict orders, no matter what I say, he says, no matter how I beg, do not untie me. He makes the decision while he's still free, because he knows that in the moment of temptation, he won't be free. 3,000 years later, we have built the Sirens. I mean, we carry them. We carry them in our pockets. The feed that knows exactly what you cannot resist. The algorithm that never sleeps, never tires, and sings a song composed precisely, mathematically for you. And we keep telling ourselves, well, we'll resist it with willpower. We won't do the same tomorrow that we did yesterday. But we generally don't, and that's the design. The Jewish answer to Odysseus's dilemma is Odysseus's answer: bind yourself in advance. That's what a mitzvah is, a commitment made before the moment of temptation arrives. And the greatest mast of all is what we're fast approaching and approaching every week, the Sabbath, Shabbat. 1 day in 7, bound in advance. No work, no commerce, no screens. Not because we're strong, but precisely because we know our nature. We know we aren't. So the ancient world knew that freedom isn't the absence of the rope. Sometimes freedom is choosing the right one and the mast. So I want to talk about the scene that moved me perhaps most in the film and in the poem originally. Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, and there's just a momentary quiet moment. 20 years are gone, and he comes home disguised as a beggar. By the way, that's in the Jewish tradition as well. I love the idea that Elijah the prophet is in many, many configurations in our tradition, coming back into our world as unrecognizable, undesirable, that Elijah will come back into the world, ushering in a messianic age, an age of peace, but we won't be ready. Why? Because we'll ignore him, because he's a lowly beggar. And that's how Odysseus comes home, as a beggar, as a nobody, as the person who smells in our midst, whom we don't want any contact with. His own wife doesn't even know him. His son doesn't recognize him. And an old woman, Eurycleia, the nurse who raised him from infancy, kneels to wash the stranger's feet. And her hand finds it, a scar, a wound from a boar hunt when he was a boy. And she knows before anyone else in the household, before his wife, before his son in the poem, an old woman recognizes the king by his wound. In Homer's telling, the poem stops everything at that moment. It freezes the entire drama to tell the story of a scar. The hunt, the boar, the earlier years of life, the grandfather, as if it's to say, this is what a body is. This is a body as an archive. Your history is written on your own skin. After 20 years, everything about Odysseus has changed. His face, his frame, his name, which has been hiding across the whole sea. The one thing that cannot lie, the one thing that carries his true story is his scar. We're recognized by what wounded us and by our strength and the journey we made up from those wounds. And sitting there in the dark, I thought about a husband and wife that I knew for many, many good years, a couple married a very long time, really extraordinary people who made a profound impact on my life. When the wife passed, at her Shiva, which is the 7-day mourning period, we gathered. And when the community gathers in a house, people tell stories in this case, and the husband told a story that none of us expected. He said, after every major argument, a fight in their marriage, and there were fights as there are in many marriages, the real ones, he said, the ones that could have calcified into contempt, those arguments, those fights that harden us. He said, we had a rule. We would, ready for this, we would get undressed, completely undressed. We would sit down, the two of us, naked. He said, when we were young, it changed the mood perhaps. But as we got older, our bodies gave us more to laugh about than to argue about. And then he said the part that is really, I'll say, epic, Odyssean, and profound and wise, that has stayed with me, that I'll never forget. He said, we would see each other's scars, and every scar was a memory we shared. Do you remember that surgery? And she'd say, do you remember that time you fell off the ladder trimming the hedges? And there they were, no clothes, no armor, no covering, no positions to defend. The anger just couldn't survive it. What was left was laughter and humility and almost unbearable recognition of humanity, of deep, deep love, of abiding love, of being by each other's side, of realizing the journey that they had made toward each other and with one another. He followed her about a year later. And I've come to believe that he gave us at that Shiva not only such beauty of soul, but a beautiful, wise teaching. It might sound a little rated R, but I think we can handle the idea of it, that a married couple sees each other in their fullness, in their wholeness. But what he added for me was the wisdom, not just the experience. I think about what Odysseus' entire journey is really asking. It's not asking, can I reach the shore of Ithaca? Because that's, in a sense, geography and journeying. It's about transportation and winds. But after everything, after 20 years, after everything that I've done and everything done to me, can I still be known? Can anybody still recognize me? That's what home is. Home isn't a palace. Home isn't an address. Home is the place where someone knows your story. Someone understands your scars, because they were there when you got them. that husband and wife came home to each other after every great battle, not by winning the argument, by taking off the armor. Now let's come back to the question that I planted at the beginning. Homer's story ends at home. Ours ends mid-journey. Moses sees the land and never enters, except Homer knew something his readers often forgot and probably still forget. Deep in the poem, Odysseus is given a prophecy. Yes, you'll reach Ithaca. You will reclaim your home, but afterward you must leave again. One more journey. Carry an oar. Listen to this. Carry an oar on your shoulder and walk inland away from the sea until you meet people so far away from the ocean, the sea, that they mistake your oar for a farming tool. Only then may you return, and only then will you find peace. Even Odysseus, the man who spent 20 years fighting to get home, is not permitted to simply arrive and rest and unpack his suitcase and stop. Even in the great epic of homecoming, there's no final arrival. And I'll admit something to you. Homer's original poem that I read in high school at the time with a great English teacher contains an image that I dearly missed in the film. Odysseus and Penelope's marriage bed, I don't think I saw it in the film, but somebody might in the comments tell me it was there. It was carved from a single living olive tree by Odysseus' own hands, still rooted in the earth. The bed can't be moved. That was their secret. The film, I think, lets it go, and I understand why. But notice what even the greatest adaptation left behind. The image of a marriage with roots, with grounding. Sometimes the ancient text holds treasures that no film, no camera can, or adaptation can carry. But no final arrival. That the film understands, and so does my tradition in its bones. Moses dies on the far bank, and every single year on the same day, Jewish people around the world read the final verses of the Torah. Moses on the mountain, the land he will never enter, but that he sees. And then without pausing, in the same service, we roll the scroll from the back end, from the end to the beginning, and we read the words, "In the beginning, Bereshit." We never let the story end. We never let the epic journey end. Ours and its. The characters and the characters as they show up in our own stories. The moment we arrive, we begin again, because our deepest claim about the human condition is this. You're not built for arrival. You're built for journeying, whether that's physical or spiritual. The destination wasn't the point. The point is who the journey makes you. So there we were last night, my son and I, walking out of that theater, not far from home. And I said, incredible 3 hours that flew by, and they did. The time really flies. It's a great film. I just loved it. I loved what he did. I loved the way that Nolan resisted the modern technology that could have made it beautiful, but somehow lose the texture of human hands that he attributed, that he made sure were present in the whole telling of the story. So here we are, these thousands of years later, being moved by the same story, being moved by stories. We're ultimately a people that thrives on stories, that thrives on looking to the elders and saying, what do you have to tell me by way of a once upon a time? That marriage story, the arguments, the nakedness, the vulnerability, the ability to see one another, to apprehend the wholeness of a person, their weaknesses and their strength. That's in the story of each of our lives. I hope you see the movie. I hope these little insights, if they were in fact insights, are helpful to you. My best wishes to you. Looking forward to reading your comments. If you have comments in relation to each other, of course, I ask always, be respectful of each other. Everybody has a point of view. And lastly, I want to ask you to follow us and to subscribe and to share. Thank you. For The Meaning Mindset, I'm Rabbi Ron Li-Paz.
This season is produced and edited by Jonah Li-Paz. Content editing by Bronwyn Li-Paz. Digital marketing by Notebook Media. The Meaning Mindset is hosted by Rabbi Ron Li-Paz. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.